A new report by intelligence officials says there is no evidence that the unidentified aerial phenomena seen by Navy pilots in recent years are alien spacecrafts.
But they aren't ruling it out either. They do concede that the UAPs remain a mystery.
So I reached out to my spirit guide in the UFO world, Sagar, and Sagar said, this story is bullshit. It's a Pentagon Psyop.
Yes, he's right.
So that's Sagar's take. As the kind of resident skeptic on all of this stuff, I remain, first of all, I think what we have to understand is that we are receiving all of this information through the prism of who wants us to get it.
Right.
So whenever 60 Minutes, is involved in something, there's something cultural going on. There's 60 Minutes is such a towering, institutional figure.
CBS Viacom or Viacom CBS. It's a corporate.
And so there are factions within the national security apparatus, whether it's the Pentagon or the Air Force or other amounts that aren't necessarily coalesced into a single program at this point, but who are motivated to persuade us that this thing is moving. And so whenever you see quick public shifts of opinion on things, I wonder, well, who's benefiting from this and where is this stuff coming from? Which doesn't mean any of it's untrue, but I also want to know that. I mean, what's your read on the motivation of this Pentagon report?
So I'm with Sagar on this. My friend Tom Rogan, who's really well sourced on these issues, he tweeted, "This won't age well for Avril Haines. Not that they can't explain, that's fine, but if really no new conclusions, nuclear strategic interdiction, unconventional propulsion, and sensor systems, then they're playing games with the American people." I agree with that because I think what was happening is that the momentum was building as some leaks were coming out and as those initial videos were leaked. The Navy then sort of had to release them because they were generating so much attention that they just sort of ended up releasing the videos. I think the momentum was building, and for them to, I actually think Sagar is completely correct when he says this is a Pentagon psyop and a bullshit one at that, because it's what they're doing here is trying to say there's no reason for them strategically to be like, listen, there's no evidence of this. That's like saying there's no evidence of, there's no evidence of pizza turning into a monster, right? Like they have no reason to come out and say there's no evidence of this being a UFO, but also we can't rule it out. So that is right. That is a very, I think, a specific and strategic. That's an indication that this is. I think we would both agree that whatever is coming out of here is strategic. But I think this is that's an indication to me that this was a very strategically placed comment to the New York Times, and I agree very much with Tom that it will not age well. I think it's a reaction to sort of building external comments from some people who have been inside the Pentagon and working on these issues, who have been sounding the alarm. You have people like Harry Reid, who are his voice is amplifying more and more, and I think what they're doing is just trying to blunt that a little bit.
Yeah, one thing that makes me nervous about some of this stuff is that it was really bubbling up, pre-Trump.
Yes.
You had Harry Reid, who, as you said, is somebody who's passionate about this and has invested, and got the government to invest serious money in looking at it, which then created a program, which then has its own motivation to justify itself.
Yeah.
Because now you have people employed by the government whose job it is to examine UAPs. And so they're certainly not going to be the ones that are going to shut down their own program, and they're going to be able to find people, who have evidence of unexplained phenomena. You also had John Podesta, who was Hillary Clinton's chairman.
That's right.
Campaign chairman, before the WikiLeaks emails, he was known to be somebody who, is very interested in this issue, and I think there was a plan that, with Hillary Clinton as president, there was going to be, some serious exploration of these phenomena. Instead, Donald Trump becomes president. A lid goes on all of this stuff, which is crazy because, Trump is more willing to believe this kind of stuff than anybody else. Roger Stone, I'm sure, would love nothing more. And in fact, it was Trump who ordered this Pentagon investigation.
Right.
And it's only being concluded under Biden. And so I just want to know more about the factions at play and what their motivations are and what they're looking at. I mean, that's my kind of bias and orientation as a DC journalist, I guess.
Well, and that's the crux of everything at the end of the day, and especially when things are coming from the intelligence community. But what I would say is that they have lost their ability to sort of control the external conversation about UAPs and UFOs, because there are now so many people that have spent time in the Pentagon who are talking. There are now so many people who have spent time in our government who are talking, that this conversation is no longer relegated to the crazy hair guy on the History Channel. This is moving beyond that. And so I read this as an attempt to sort of dull the momentum and the energy around it, because it's just too ridiculous to say we have no evidence, but we can't rule it out. That's such a silly way to address it. The only reason I could think that they would say something like that is because they're just sort of trying to, the media's probably popping questions their way every 10 minutes. And so this was what they decided. This is the answer that they decided to give. And they thought it was the best answer that they could give for now without giving the whole farm away. I don't know. I mean, that's I think, pretty clearly what's going on. And that's my read on it. And
the last time that there was this much interest in UAPs, UFOs, was 1950s and 60s, when you started seeing in Nevada and California in particular, tons of sightings. And in the 1990s, and we have this tear sheet here, the CIA came forward and said, a lot of this was us.
It was us.
We had spy planes that were classified, that were roaming over the globe, and that we know for a fact that some of these sightings we identified immediately as our planes, and rather than saying that we have a global spy operation going on, they started making stuff up about ice crystals. Yeah. Now there are other experts who have examined the CIA's explanation and said, no, like, that doesn't actually square. That maybe a few of them can be explained as these classified aerial spy planes, but not all of them. So then the question is, what is the CIA and what is NSA? What are the other? What is the national security apparatus doing in the skies now that we don't know about?
And that was sort of famously their excuse in Roswell. And I think the big difference between the 50s and 60s and some of these, particularly these Navy videos today, is that you have experts, again, people from inside the Pentagon who spent time in the Pentagon, and military pilots saying that this technology is not possible right now. And that, I think, is a huge difference between some of what I think the CIA and intelligence people have said, like, listen, this was us. Some of those I think are legitimate. But when you're looking at these videos and you have experts in all this technology, I have yet to see a very good explanation for what that could possibly be if we don't have the available technology to explain what's happening in those videos. And so I think with that context, this conversation is very different.
And we're still digesting this report, and next week we'll digest it further with some expert analysis, bring some other folks on who know more about this than I do, for sure.
Well, Ryan, you consulted your spirit guide.
I did.
If that's not sufficient, I don't know what is.
That's good enough for me, frankly.
This is a big story. I mean, there's so many cultural implications when we're talking about UFOs, and I think people are starting to realize, like, hey, on a lot of days, this stuff is headline news. This should actually be in our morning news digest.
Yeah, here it is. That'll do it for us today, everybody. Thank you for tuning in, and we wish you all a safe and happy weekend. Next week on Rising, we have another great week planned. We got Zed Jelani, The Funky Academic, Brianna Joy Gray, and more.
And don't forget to hit that like, share, and subscribe button below. We will see you all next week. Have a great weekend, everybody. Summer is here. Get outside. It'll be a good one.
Enjoy.